Prince Sultan Air Base has just become the most important story in this entire war. Not because of the missiles, and not because of the fires currently burning on its runways, but because of what this base represents, what was stationed there, what has now been destroyed, and what the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has shown to every military planner, every Allied government, and every American pilot flying over the Persian Gulf by striking it again. The IRGC announced what they called Wave 51. They named it. They numbered it. They even listed the aircraft they claim were destroyed. 1 F-35 and 3 F-16 fighter jets, with several other aircraft severely damaged. Tehran described the strike as retaliation against what they called the origin of attacks against the Islamic homeland. If you heard that announcement and assumed it was just routine Iranian propaganda, stay with me for the next few minutes. Because once you understand what Prince Sultan Air Base actually is within the structure of American air power, once you understand what was parked on those runways and why it was there, and once you place this strike within the wider pattern of Iranian attacks on American assets in this region over the past several weeks, the picture that begins to form is not routine. It is not propaganda. It is a systematic operational campaign carried out with a level of intelligence and precision that should be triggering emergency meetings in Washington, Riyadh, and Brussels at the same time. Wave 51. Remember that number. We will return to it because that number alone tells you something that no official briefing has clearly addressed and something the American public has not been given the framework to understand. Let's begin with the base itself. Prince Sultan Air Base is not simply a large airfield in the Saudi desert. It is not just a facility with long runways and American flags at the entrance. It is the operational backbone of the entire American air campaign over Iran. Prince Sultan is located about 75 miles southeast of Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia's Al-Kharj region. It has been a key part of American military operations in the Gulf since the 1990s. During Operation Desert Storm, it served as one of the main staging areas for coalition air power. After the 2003 Iraq War, the American presence there decreased for some time. But starting around 2019, as tensions with Iran increased, the United States significantly expanded its presence at Prince Sultan once again. By the time this conflict began, Prince Sultan was no longer a secondary base with a small American presence. It had become a major hub, hosting some of the most valuable and operationally critical aircraft in the U.S. military inventory. Among them were tanker aircraft such as the KC-135 Stratotanker and the KC-46 Pegasus. These aircraft act as flying gas stations, allowing American fighters to conduct strike missions deep inside Iranian territory without having to return to distant bases after every sortie. Without forward-deployed tankers at Prince Sultan, the operational range of every F-35 and F-16 operating from Gulf bases shrinks dramatically. Missions that currently require a certain number of flight hours would suddenly need additional refueling chains, more aircraft, more coordination, and longer exposure inside contested airspace. The tankers at Prince Sultan are not just support aircraft. They are the infrastructure that makes the current pace of the entire strike campaign possible. The base also hosted E-3 Sentry aircraft. I previously explained what happened to 4 E-3 aircraft during the strikes that occurred before Wave 51. 2 of those 4 aircraft were destroyed at Prince Sultan. The E-3 serves as the airborne brain of the entire air operation. It tracks hundreds of aircraft at the same time, provides pilots with real-time information on threats within a 250-mile radius, and coordinates electronic warfare suppression with timing accurate to the second. Prince Sultan was one of the main operating locations for E-3 aircraft in this region. It had already lost 2 of them. That means the base targeted in Wave 51 was already operating with a weakened intelligence network even before the first ballistic missile of this latest strike left its launcher. And now, according to the IRGC announcement, Prince Sultan has also lost 1 F-35 and 3 F-16s on the ground. Now let's talk about what these aircraft are, what they cost, and what it means to lose them in this way. The F-35 Lightning II. Lightning II is the most advanced strike fighter in the American military inventory. It is a 5th-generation stealth aircraft, meaning its design is built to defeat radar systems that could normally detect and track a conventional aircraft without difficulty. It carries its weapons inside an internal weapons bay, which helps preserve its low radar signature during strike missions. It also has sensors that give the pilot a 360-degree real-time awareness of the battlefield, something no other aircraft currently matches. Its avionics are deeply integrated with the wider American military network. The aircraft shares data in real time with platforms such as the E-3 Sentry, with other fighter jets, with ground control systems, and with naval forces operating in the same region. A single F-35A costs roughly $80 million per aircraft in basic flyaway cost, but that number does not show the full picture. When you include research, development, maintenance systems, training pipelines, and long-term sustainment, the total program cost per aircraft becomes far higher. The United States operates a large fleet of F-35s. Losing one aircraft does not cripple the fleet. But losing one F-35 on the ground, on a runway at a base that American operational security was designed to protect from ballistic missile strikes tells you something that the aircraft's price tag cannot. It tells you Iran can locate it. The entire operational logic behind deploying a stealth aircraft is based on the idea that the enemy cannot easily find or target it during a mission. Iranian air defense systems have not demonstrated the ability to reliably detect or engage an F-35 in flight while it moves through contested airspace. That stealth advantage is the aircraft's core strength in this theater. But an F-35 parked on a runway is not a stealth aircraft. It is simply an aircraft sitting in one place. And if Iran can locate that parking area with enough precision to guide ballistic missiles onto it, the stealth technology that makes the F-35 the most advanced fighter in the world becomes irrelevant the moment the aircraft lands. You cannot use stealth to escape a ballistic missile strike on the runway where you parked. Now consider the F-16 Fighting Falcon. The 3 F-16s claimed destroyed in Wave 51 belong to a different category of aircraft. They are older in design, far less expensive, and much more numerous than the American inventory. But right now, the F-16 is flying a large share of the conventional strike missions in this campaign. It handles the operations that do not require the F-35's specialized stealth and sensor capabilities. In simple terms, the F-16 is the workhorse of the operation. Losing 3 of them in a single strike at one base does not end the mission. But losing 3 of them at the same base where E-3 aircraft and tanker assets were already destroyed continues a pattern that does not look random and does not look opportunistic. Now, we need to talk about that pattern. Because this is the analytical thread that no official briefing has clearly connected in public. And it is the reason Wave 51 is something very different from a typical missile strike on a military base. Look at what Iran has targeted throughout this conflict. Not randomly, in sequence. First came the attacks on MIM-104 Patriot radar and air defense systems. Those strikes weakened the American missile defense network, protecting bases across the Gulf. Pilots operating from those bases previously relied on advanced air defense systems to shield the infrastructure supporting their missions. And once those systems are degraded, the cost for Iran to strike those bases again becomes much lower. Second came the attacks on aerial refueling tankers, such as the KC-135 Stratotanker and the KC-46 Pegasus. These aircraft are not glamorous. They rarely appear in recruitment videos. They do not carry weapons. But they are the logistical link that connects the combat range of every fighter jet in the region to the larger strategy of the entire air campaign. Strike the tankers and the fighters' reach becomes shorter. The campaign becomes harder to maintain at the same pace. Missions that were once simple become complicated. Missions that were already complicated begin to look risky. Third came the E-3 Sentry. 4 of them were reportedly destroyed across 2 countries in just 18 hours. These aircraft are the brains of the integrated air operation. They connect every pilot to every other pilot, to every threat in the sky, and to every electronic warfare asset in the theater. Remove 4 E-3 aircraft, and the U.S. Air Force flying the next morning is not the same force that flew the day before. Instead of a tightly connected system, it becomes a group of capable aircraft operating without the architecture that once made them overwhelmingly effective together. And now Wave 51, F-35, Lightning II, and F-16. Fighting Falcon reportedly destroyed on the ground at the very base that hosted all of those other systems. This does not look like a list of targets chosen by chance. It looks like a list built from a clear operational plan. Someone in Tehran, or within the planning system Iran is using, appears to have written down the key components that allow American air power in this region to function as an integrated system. Then they built a strike campaign designed to remove those components one layer at a time. First air defense, then range, then coordination, and finally the aircraft themselves at the hub where everything operates. You are not simply watching Iran attack American air power. You are watching Iran take it apart piece by piece. Before continuing, something important needs to be said clearly. In conflict analysis, intellectual honesty matters more than almost anywhere else. When it is missing, audiences end up with false pictures of wars that have very real consequences. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, damage reports should be treated as claims, not confirmed facts, until independent verification is available. Iran has a well-documented history of inflating battle damage assessments for domestic political messaging and psychological impact in the region. Official announcements about strike results come from the same system responsible for presenting the Islamic Republic in a favorable way to its own population and to regional audiences closely watching this conflict. Those audiences have very different interests than a defense analyst trying to determine the actual level of military losses. The United States has not officially confirmed the loss of an F-35 at Prince Sultan Air Base. Saudi Arabia has not released a public damage report either. Independent verification of damage at an active military base during ongoing operations is extremely difficult in real time, so the exact numbers should be treated with caution. It is entirely possible that Iran exaggerated the damage. The F-35 claim could be wrong, or it could involve an aircraft that was not combat ready. The number of F-16 losses could also be overstated. But even if we apply that skepticism very aggressively, several things remain true. Prince Sultan Air Base was struck by ballistic missiles. That is confirmed. Multiple impacts occurred at a base hosting American stealth fighters, conventional strike aircraft, tankers, and previously E-3 Sentry aircraft. That is confirmed. And the IRGC was able to target the base with enough precision to place missiles near aircraft parking areas that normally hold some of the most protected aircraft in the American arsenal. The strike itself confirms that level of targeting. Even if every damage claim were exaggerated by 50%, the targeting demonstration alone would still be extremely serious, because the real question is not whether one F-35 or two F-35s burned on that runway. The real question is how Iran continues to locate, track, and strike aircraft that American operational security is specifically designed to keep hidden and protected. And that question becomes harder to answer, not easier, regardless of the exact damage numbers. Tehran's public description of Wave 51 also deserves close attention. It is not only propaganda, it is a message designed for several audiences at the same time. For Iran's domestic audience, the message is simple. The Islamic Republic is striking back against forces attacking the homeland. The IRGC is fulfilling its role. The revolution is defended. Missiles are being launched and enemy aircraft are burning. That narrative serves obvious political purposes during a conflict that is costly and controversial at home. For regional Arab audiences, especially the Gulf states, the message is sharper. Tehran did not describe Prince Sultan Air Base simply as a military target chosen for operational reasons. It described the base as the origin of attacks against the Islamic homeland. That wording is aimed directly at Riyadh. It tells Saudi Arabia and every Gulf state hosting American forces that, in Iran's view, hosting the base itself means participation in the war. There is no separation between the American base and the host country. In Iran's declared logic, the base and the host nation become the same category of target. Saudi Arabia now has to live with that framing while American aircraft operate from its territory. It must consider it while two E-3 aircraft have already been destroyed and while Iranian missiles have now struck its runways multiple times. Inside the Royal Saudi Air Force, discussions are almost certainly happening about what to do with their own aircraft stationed at these bases, including their E-3 variants, and how to balance their alliance with the United States against the risks created by Iranian retaliation. Those conversations will never appear in an official statement from Riyadh, but they are happening. For international observers, especially in Moscow and Beijing, the message of Wave 51 requires very little translation. Russian military analysts will note that Iran has reportedly struck an F-35 at a forward base. They will examine the targeting precision required and the intelligence network necessary to achieve it. Then they will add that information to their models of how American air power might be weakened during a large-scale conflict. Chinese defense planners will do the same thing, though far more quietly and through channels that avoid public attribution. They are not watching this conflict simply as observers. They are watching it as students. Every vulnerability that Iran successfully exploits becomes a lesson that can be studied and potentially applied elsewhere. So this is the operational picture after Wave 51. American pilots flying strike missions over Iran now have less of almost everything the system of American air power was designed to provide. Less vision. The E-3 Sentry aircraft that once provided a coordinated airborne picture across the entire theater have been reduced, creating coverage gaps over the routes American aircraft most often use. Pilots who flew 2 weeks ago with near-perfect awareness of the battlefield are now flying with reduced real-time threat information, giving Iranian air defense operators more time to detect and attempt to track them. Less reach. Tanker aircraft, like the KC-135 Stratotanker and KC-46 Pegasus, have been targeted at several Gulf facilities. The mathematics of every mission has changed. Operations that were routine are now more complicated. The margin for unexpected problems has grown smaller. Less coordination. The E-3 did more than observe. It coordinated every aircraft in the sky at the same time. It synchronized electronic warfare timing down to the second. It controlled the spacing between strike groups and support aircraft. Without it, each aircraft operates more independently and with less integration. In contested airspace, integration wins battles. Independence sometimes just means survival. And now there's also less aircraft inventory at the most important forward base in the theater. Whether the F-35 Lightning II claim is eventually confirmed or not, Prince Sultan Air Base has already absorbed 2 waves of Iranian strikes. The base that served as the central hub of the American operational system in this region has now been hit. It has lost equipment and aircraft, and it is operating in a security environment where every commander on those runways understands that Iran has shown both the capability and the willingness to strike it again. The United States Air Force flying tomorrow morning will be structurally different from the force that flew at the beginning of this conflict. It is now operating with real, confirmed, and difficult to replace losses in the platforms and infrastructure that once made it more than just a group of capable aircraft. Those systems turned it into a fully integrated force where every part supported the others. The individual aircraft are still extremely capable, but the network that connected them, protected them, extended their range, and coordinated their actions is now thinner than it was before. And thin networks tend to fail in the moments and places where pressure is highest. Their breakdowns are rarely uniform. Instead, the weaknesses appear exactly where the operational demand is greatest,